Ma, namaste. Actually, I am a bit overwhelmed because of the volume which we want to take up today as part of the series on Sri Aurobindo's writings. And the volume we intend is volume 2, which is collected poems. It is, as for me, it is one of my favorite volumes other than Savitri. And therefore, it's like an ocean where, where everything is beautiful, countless pearls. So let me start with how I look at Sri Aurobindo's poems in the backdrop of the entire works. So, in Indian tradition, all the writings of the great masters, realized ones, are regarded as the Vangmay De, the word body. So if we take that Sri Aurobindo's writings are his word body, then the poems are like the garland on the word body. And this garland is of rarest of jewels and pearls, which Sri Aurobindo has gathered patiently through his tapasya over years and decades. And he is gifting it to earth, to us. So what he is doing is that through the poem, we are coming in contact with not just a portion of Sri Aurobindo's consciousness, but one of the most fundamental core. That is the beauty of a poem. So we'll see this difference between a prose writing and a poetry writing. Poetry generally goes through the mind. So we'll see when we read a prose, the mind is stirring and trying to understand. By the time it actually percolates through all the different layers of the mind, down into the inner being, very often it is half digested. So that's why the mother recommends that whenever we read Sri Aurobindo's writings, equally applies to her, she says that stay quiet. If the mind has too many ideas with the discursive intellect, rushing at every word, every half a sentence, every phrase, and trying to find a meaning, analyze it, then we lose actually what is really coming down. But when we are quiet, then we receive it beautifully, it enters into the inner being. But nevertheless, prose has this difficulty. But poetry is of another kind. Poetry cuts through all this and touches the inner being. So that's why sometimes when we read Sri Aurobindo's writings, even the prose is like a poetry. Especially when you read something like the synthesis, it comes closest to poetry, though it's a prose writing, because it goes directly to the inner being. Second aspect is that if we look closely, normally that there is a difference between written speech and spoken speech. And it's very interesting that while Sri Aurobindo wrote largely, the mother spoke largely. And the difference is that in written speech, what we miss is the stress on the words. And when we put our own stress, then it distorts the meaning. And I have often given this example. Do not imagine that truth and falsehood will stay together. Now see how many ways it can be said. Do not imagine that truth and falsehood can stay. Totally indifferent to the whole thing. Another is complete extreme. Do not imagine that truth and falsehood can stay together. Now, we have turned Sri Aurobindo into a super cop who is telling us, do not imagine. So people have actually asked this question. People get frightened because they add their own ideas to it. And the mother says that this is a language of grace. It is not of a, police saying, do not imagine. It's a language of grace that, look here, my child, do not imagine that you will continue doing all stupidities and, you will still have. So basically he's telling us, don't come out of this. So the stress we put on words is missing in prose. But in poetry is by definition the stress you put on words. So that is unique to poetry. If one understands poetry and the poetic style, then poetry is like that. There is a stress on words, there is a stress on syllables. So syllable is like each vowel, there is a portion, like in a word you will have one vowel or two vowels. So each vowel, a word, a set of letters which are around that vowel are a syllable. So sometimes in one word you will have two syllables. And then there is things like dactyl. And then there is song, then there is lyrics. So poetry, the beauty of poetry is that because it is a rhythm, meter, sound is as important, in certain sense more important than the words. So poetry is never to be read like a prose. And one example. So we have, just randomly I have opened, and this is Urvashi. So it is through darkness and immense dim light, night he went, mid phantom outlines of approaching trees. This is not poetry. It is poetry. But if we read like poetically, through darkness and immense dim night he went. Now this is the stress. So stress can be on words, stress can be on syllables. It's a whole technique and science of poetry. But just as with music, if you appreciate music through the scientific part, one can. Hey, look at this raga, oh what, how wonderful. And this is a kind of appreciation, very beautiful if one knows it. But you don't need to know this actually to appreciate and have the joy of poetry. Like music. So if your music is going, you just flow with its rhythm, try to catch its rhythm, and there is something within us like an inner ear, and that will catch it. Like Savitri. If you really get into it, that rhythm will come. This is something which, like music. There are two ways people learn music. One, they go to a classical school, learn about the ragas, learn, which is the right way. The perfect way. But there are people who listen to the songs, it catches into the ear, and then they pick it up. So one of the best ways to really get into the rhythm of poetry is to read poetry and to listen to poetry. So as we read poetry of different kinds, it gets into our rhythm, into our ear, inner ear, and we will enjoy it better. So poetry has this capacity to touch directly the inner being. And also because, see, normally in poetry you don't count how many lines, because it's a stanza which is running like this, flowing like a Ganges. But in prose, sometimes you say long sentences. You won't say this in poetry because it bites nature, it is like that. And there are different styles of poetry. There are different meters. There are meters in Sanskrit. There are meters in, English poetry. English poetry, you have 2 meters. Each meter is the rhythm. And meters are defined by the number of foot. And each foot is where you stress. Lone he went. So you have to see that becomes 1 foot. Then second foot. We'll read some of these examples. So it's very interesting that when we read poetry, it is the meter. And meter is defined by how many foot. Pada, if you want to put it in Hindi. So based on that, one reads and gets the beauty and the joy of it. And there again, you have 2-footed meter, 3-footed meter, 4-footed meter, 5-footed iambic pentameter is a very common one. Shakespeare has used, and Sri Aurobindo has himself used it very freely. Now, again, there are different ways of defining it. I'm just giving a very quick background. Not that I want to go into it. It's the most boring part, the academic part. But there is something little bit like, again, you will read a term called quantitative hexameter, which raises idea, is there a qualitative hexameter? Yes, there is. But there is a difference. The way you use the meter in that, the stress of syllables. So we have to understand that there is a different stress of syllables due to which the rhythm of a poetry changes. One of the most challenging meters of English poetry is a quantitative hexameter. Very few people have written it in perfection. And Sri Aurobindo has written an epic poem, Elion, running into 130 pages of solid poetry in that hexameter. So we'll just read quickly as we go through, little bit snippets from here and there. As I said, this is very tempting to read Sri Aurobindo's poem, but just a little outline. So Sri Aurobindo started with poetry. He said at one place, I'm a poet and hold your breath, politician first, then a philosopher. So by politician he meant not politician the way we understand, but one who understands the play of forces, the dynamics of power, because he had come to establish the divine reign upon earth. So he has to understand how, there is the dynamics, balance of asuric power, the cosmic powers, the divine power. So he said that first thing is poet. And we see that the first ever published writing of Sri Aurobindo is poetry. And that we have read, Light. And the last writings go on to, the last writing is Savitri, which is of course the cosmic poem. And at the age of 10, he wrote this first poem called Light, and the last one apparently 1947. So we can imagine that how much importance he gave to poetry. When Sri Aurobindo had stopped, Arya comes in between, there is a period. But after that, his major writings were complete. But poetry continued. The poems written in 30s, poems written in 40s, poems written in 20s. So this was Sri Aurobindo's main way of expression. Mystics have used poetry as a medium, primarily because of this power of poetry to go straight to the inner being. The second important part of poetry is it's like a mantra. So when we read it in the right way, like a mantra does its work, it tends to do its work. It is like a cry of the soul. That's how poetry is. Poetry is not something which is descending from above. It's the soul cry, the soul vision, the soul dynamics, the soul experience. So even the common experiences, sometimes people feel that, they see the title and they, nightingale to the sea. So they think it's about nature. Read the poem and you'll see how the soul of Sri Aurobindo has looked at sea. So he gives us his vision, substitutes it. So we also look at the sea and we say, today the sea is rough, today the sea is calm, it is blue, it is green. But when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw the sea, he saw in it Krishna and jumped into it. Sri Aurobindo, when he sees the sea, he sees in the sea the entire play of world forces. Because sea in a dream represents world forces. And he says, oh sea, I am coming to play with you. And I am coming, if you are a lion, I will ride on you holding your mane. And even if you drown me, I will refuse to acknowledge defeat. Now when we look at Sri Aurobindo's vision, the lost boat, every day we see a scene of a boat, sometime tsunami came, so many houses were gone away. But when we read Sri Aurobindo's poem, The Lost Boat, it's a very different poem altogether. Or a most common poem, a tree. What is a tree? All around we see. A tree beside the sandy river beach, holding its topmost branches to the skies, like fingers to the heavens they cannot reach. This is the soul of man. His body and brain hungry for earth, his heavenly flight detain. Do we see that when he hears the voice of the quail? So all images of nature are lifted to their sublime proportions. This is the beauty of the poet. So poetry is it refines the being. So Sri Aurobindo says that between them, art, music and poetry are a perfect education for the soul. So it refines us when we read poetry. Say when we read some of the romantic poems, Sri Aurobindo is written on love. Very few people know 10 to 14 poems on love. And what is that poem? Where he writes that you gave what you could. One brief kiss. And what I gave what I could give, a whole life. Now just imagine that what is the power of that poem. That where he says that he who gives something in return of something is a shopman's heart. He doesn't know love. All the shades and moods. So in a way we are connecting with different dimensions. It is the best way to understand Sri Aurobindo's own life. How all the experiences are here, his experiences at Baroda when he looks at the, we know that, we have read about that, he looked at, in Baroda at that image of Kali and he experienced the world mother. This is how Sri Aurobindo is described, right? Now let us see how he describes this in his poem. So, the stone goddess, if somebody can quickly, when I say, just take it out. The stone goddess. Yes. Okay, meanwhile I can read about this. 608, right. Excellent. So we have this stone goddess, 608. 608. Just see. Now we have read this experience. Most people have read this experience in prose form. Now, look at when Sri Aurobindo speaks of it in a poetic form. What he would have really experienced. He has said, when I saw the world mother. What does it mean? So here he writes, the stone goddess in a town of gods housed in a little shrine. It's actually a very small shrine. From sculptured limbs, the Godhead looked at me. Now you look at the very first description. Normally, we think that he went, he saw, and he had the vision of the Divine Mother. But he suddenly sees that the Divine Mother is staring at him. A living presence, deathless and divine, a form that harbored all infinity. The great world mother and her mighty will inhabited the earth's abysmal sleep. Now you see, now it is no more. Why? Because stone. So stone, the earth. So through that, when you invoke the divine presence in a stone, it is actually in matter that you are bringing that goddess. So she is inhabiting earth's abysmal sleep, voiceless, omnipotent, inscrutable, mute in the desert and the sky and deep. So suddenly there is the vision of the Divine Mother becoming this material creation and this material nature. Now veiled with mind, she dwells and speaks no word. Now she has become universalized. So much later in Synthesis, he would write that when we love the divine, we must have the universal vision of the divine. So how the divine is everywhere and in everything. Hiding until our soul has seen, has heard the secret of a strange embodiment. What is this strange embodiment? This whole creation is her embodiment. One in the worshipper and the immobile shape. So look at the line. One in the worshipper and the immobile shape, a beauty and mystery, flesh or stone can drape. He's not saying flesh nor stone can drape. Flesh or stone can drape. Either you can make it with your consciousness in a sculpture, or you can do it in the very body, a house of flesh. Two temples which can be built for the stone god, for the goddess. And since we are at it, we see so many descriptions of gods and goddesses in Hindu thought. And we have Shiva. Now in Shiva's, he has number of poems. The Nataraj, the cosmic dancer, the creator, then from the inconscient he's rising. And one is Epiphany, that is remarkable. Shiva in his two forms, as Asutosh and Shiva as Rudra. But this one, very next. On the white summit of eternity. Now the mountain Kailash we have all read. But the white summit of eternity, a single soul of bare infinities. I am not going into description of the poem because we are having a whole series on that, 2 series. So I am just resisting back, but just the joy of it. Guarded he keeps by a fired screen of peace. This is not the peace of a dead person. Fired screen, tapasya, tremendous tapasya. You can't approach him. You have the fired screen. So it's just not like you will go to Mount Kailash and do this pranam, it's enough. His mystic loneliness of nude ecstasy. Shiva is regarded as, he is nude. He just wears a bagambar. Otherwise he is in that state. But now we have the Shiva and Parvati coming together. But touched by an immense delight to be, he looks across unending depths and sees, musing amid the inconscient silences, the mighty mother's dumb felicity. So this is the material nature. Now you see Shivlingam, mighty mother's dumb felicity, the joy which is there in material nature. He sees, looking across the silences. Half now awake, she rises to his glance. So she begins to rise. You see, an entire mystic process there. The Kundalini is there. Half. Now, under the eyes, gaze of the Lord, she begins to rise because she has to travel to the Lord. Then, moved to circling by her heartbeat's will, she circles across. The rhythmic worlds describe that passion dance. As she climbs, worlds are created. And this is the entire process within us. Life springs in her. In material nature, life springs. And mind is born. Her face, she lifts to him who is herself. Until the spirit leaps into the spirit's embrace. Ever seen a description of Kundalini like this? Everywhere you'll hear, there is a serpent, 3.5 feet, coils up. but look at the 3.5 feet. Matter, life, mind, and then it lifts the head. Kundalini, the whole serpent is awake. So what does it do? By lifting the head, looks at the Lord who has called her, and then realizes, oh, this is me, and merges into him. But goes by the poem Shiva. What a wonderful poem this is about, something deep mystic truth. And then Krishna. At last, I find a meaning of soul's birth. Everybody says, what is the purpose of life? We are born only to die. Very pessimistic views. But look here what Sri Aurobindo says. I have found the meaning of soul's birth. At last I have found the meaning of soul's birth into this universe terrible and sweet. Look at this. It is terrible, but it is sweet also. You can't just say it is terrible. Into this universe terrible and sweet, I who have felt the hungry heart of earth. What is the hunger that earth has nourished which never gets satisfied? It is there within us, that hunger, insatiable hunger. Whatever we may get in life, still that hunger remains. Aspiring beyond heaven to Krishna's feet. What a marvel of line this is. I have seen the beauty of immortal eyes. He has seen Krishna. He has seen the beauty of those eyes and heard the passion of the lover's flute. So what happens when we hear Krishna's flute? People can say, I had this experience, I had that experience. Yes, but there will be an effect of that experience. There should be a change of consciousness. So what change takes place when we have really seen Krishna and known a deathless ecstasy, surprise and sorrow in my heart forever mute. Because you have seen the glory of the glories of ecstasy, of Ananda, how can there be place for sorrow? Nearer and nearer, now the music draws. Now he is coming nearer, the flute. Life shudders with a strange felicity. Whole life is, feeling that thrill and ecstasy of the Lord coming. All nature is a wide, inanimate pause. It is waiting. See, this is Radha's wait. All nature is a wide, inanimate pause, hoping her Lord to touch, to clasp, to be. This is the state of Radha, in perfect surrender. When will the Lord come? But one day He will come. He will touch, He will clasp and become one with me. So He is waiting in that state. For this one moment lived the ages past. The world now throbs fulfilled in me at last. So each of them is a marvel. And as I said, one has to resist the temptation. But since I have read about Krishna, must read something on Radha, especially because today is Radha Ashtami. But so this poem is written very early. Krishna is written later. This poem is sometime in Baroda, early period of Baroda. And the name of, there are two poems on Radha. They are written on some words of Chandidas, very well-known Krishna Bhakt. But something has been taken from there, the sense. But Sri Aurobindo is giving, it's not a translation of his poetry, but he has given its own beauty. So we have read about Radha's prayer, isn't it? Most of us know that perfect surrender. Now this is what Sri Aurobindo writes about Radha, page 32. These are songs to Metila. So that we have already spoken about. Metila is a shrub, which is a perennial shrub. And this set of collection, which is written in England and Baroda, comes under that. And they are very sweet. Radha's complaint in absence is very beautiful, but I'll read Radha's appeal. Radha's appeal. She's appealing to whom? To Krishna. What is she appealing? O love, what more shall Radha speak, since mortal words are weak? I have spoken what I had to speak. Now I can't speak anymore because whatever I may speak sounds superfluous. What I am feeling is something too deep. In life, in death, in being and in breath, no other Lord but Thee can Radha seek. See, Mother's Radha's prayer. And look at how Sri Aurobindo's andas, how we make him a philosopher, very, thinker who is. Sri Aurobindo is a lover before anything else. And look at that love. In life, in death, in being and in breath. Even in breath, with every breath, what am I seeking? No other Lord but thee can Radha seek. This is called avyabhicharini bhakti. Abhivakt bhakti. Where there is no division of any kind. About thy feet the mighty net is wound, wherein my soul they bound. Myself resigned to servitude, my mind, my heart than thine, no sweeter slavery found. You have made a net. This is your net. My soul is wound in it. Okay, I have resigned myself. So life or death, sorrow or pleasure, whatever you give me, I have no choice. I receive it and accept it. You have created the net, you have to free me from it. Meanwhile, I am your slave. And then he brings such a marvel of human and the divine. And look at the image, how beautifully Sri Aurobindo conjures and combines the most human carnal aspect of love with the most sublime and divine. Only he can do it. Nobody else can do it. If one brief moment steal thee from mine eyes, all the time I want to see you. One brief moment, if it happens, my heart within me dies. Now you see the gopis vastraharan. Look at it, how Sri Aurobindo describes it. If one brief moment steal thee from my eyes, my heart within me dies, as girls who keep the treasures of the deep. I string thee round my neck and on my bosom prize. I want to hold you. I will not let you go. I string thee round my neck like a garland. I embrace you. And I am keeping your head on my bosom as the prize. You dare not go. If one moment you vanish, it means death for me. This is Radha. So Radha is not all this, prayer. We keep seeing. Sometimes, it's a bit, I won't use the word annoying, but what has happened? Happy Radhastami day, happy this. What does Radha represent? One moment of that. If we can live in our life, just one moment, that is called paying tribute to Radha. Not going to mandir and again singing all those bhajans that, Radha Rani aayingi and, all those ras. Radha ke bina, without Radha, there is no Krishna. But get into that state where everything we see as divine, even the net, she says, you have wound the net around you. What can I do? Helplessly I am caught. But even there I am your slave. Nobody else's slave. And I am keeping my treasures. For whom? For you. Like girls who keep the treasures of the deep. And we see the, reference, obvious reference. So there are poems like that. And then there are interesting poems which are narrative poems. So narrative poems are basically stories. So story generally told by a single person. So it's a story which is told in a poetic way. So we have narrative poems, Urvashi, Love and Death. We all have, I think, read it again. These are long poems. Baji Prabhu is another very powerful poem. And then we have sonnets from manuscripts. So sonnets are 14-line poems. And we have just read two of the sonnets. I'm just quickly, before we read some of the poems. So it is here it is categorized in terms of the dates, which is okay. That's an academic way of looking at it. Then there are poems which can be arranged according to theme. Like there are several places it's on Krishna. My preference is with theme because it's a feeling that as if Sri Aurobindo was growing like a child. It's okay. There may be some truth in it. But somebody who at 10 is writing this poem, whose lines we have read, that, the very first poem at 10 when he's writing, from the quickened womb of the primal gloom, the sun rolled black and bare, till I wove him a vest for his Ethiop breast. of the threads of my golden hair, and when the broad tent of the firmament arose on its airy spars, I penciled the hue of its matchless blue and sprangled it around with stars. So it's not just a 10-year-old. But they have arranged it probably from academic point of view. It may be useful. I don't know. So we have also sonnets here, sonnets there. So it's a bit difficult to navigate through the present volume. But the previous volume, it was very easy. Like sonnets, they are all together. You have long poems together. But now you have to look for it here and there. It's not easy to read through. But whatever it be, everybody has their own logic. And so then, as I was saying, that there are poems which are... One of the marvelous poems is the Rishi. Must read. So this Rishi describes when civilization collapsed. We must have read, no, that there are 7 continents. Now, are they 7 or 5? So 5 are inhabited. The 2 continents, one Lemurian and the other Atlantic kings. So they have... Ice Age has come over them. So when we read about this Arctic pole, so probably it was flourishing at one point of time, but the Ice Age came. And there was migration, which we read about, there's a whole book by Bal Gangadhar Tilak on the Arctic migration. Migration is not invasion, we must understand the difference. Invasion is where you come, there are local people and you drive them out. But there was, most of the parts were uninhabited. So these were the original Aryan forefathers of this earth. And when Ice Age settled, they started coming down through Russia. Some went to Iran and others came to India. And that's how a new civilization began to spring up. But they carried these, and there are evidence. In Iran, there used to be fire worship. Now, of course, it's all gone. And in Russia, there are many terms in Russian which are close to Sanskrit. And then they came down to India. And Sri Aurobindo doesn't refute this theory. He says it could be possible. But Aryan invasion is completely refuted. Aryan invasion means there were Dravidians here who were different, and the Aryans came and fought with them and drove them away. This theory was propounded because the British wanted to rule here, saying that you people are also invaders, we are also invaders. So it's justified, but it's not true. But the Rishi is about when the whole place is under ice. So there is King Manu and the Rishi. All others have gone. So we all know about Pralaya and all this. So he asks, what shall I do? So first Rishi gives him many sides of the knowledge. He has the cosmic knowledge. So he tells him about what the world is, what gods are, what is everything. And then at the end, he speaks about the purpose of life guiding him. So just a few lines from there. I'll read. I'm just randomly just taking a dip here and there so that, we just enjoy it. So this is page 236, page 237. So finally he says, you give me the command for me. I have understood all these occult worlds are there and dimensions are there, subtle worlds are there, Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, all of them are there, I have understood. But tell me what I should do. Because entire cosmology is one place. What is the command for me? So Rishi tells him, we are but sparks of that most perfect fire. Waves of that sea, from him we come, to him we go, desire eternally, and so long as he wills, our separate birth is and shall be. This idea of dissolving oneself into pralaya, into nirvana and all this, he says this is an illusion. As long as he wants you to be here, nothing can. Ultimately he has to decide and he has to make the choice. Shrink not from life. What a powerful command. Shrink not from life, O Aryan, but with mirth and joy receive his good and evil, sin and virtue, till he bids thee leave. These were our forefathers. When we look at the Mahabharata and Ramayana and we look at this period when people became very monastic, just inner life, and they forgot the outer, inner life became inert life. The people lolling in, small little pockets where they are just, very happy, away from world, not engaging with the world, not pouring out their creative energies. It's a pity, India has fallen like that. In India has a tendency. That's why Sri Aurobindo clarified that the word ashram here does not mean an escape from life. Everything of life is represented here. It's not like any other ashram where you see that people have a nice bhojan bhandar and some places where they grow vegetables and nice places to eat, meditate, temple. No, it's not like that. Every aspect of life, including cinema, scandalizing. So everything can be uplifted and seen that way. So, shrink not from life, but while thou livest, perfectly fulfill thy part. Conceive earth as thy stage, thyself the actor strong, the drama his. You are the actor. Be a strong actor. Don't be weak-kneed and, no, I want to escape. I want to find an easy way out. I want my comfort zone, the bourgeois. Be a samurai, the actor strong. It is his drama. He will decide. But you be, in essence on the Gita when he says the command of Krishna to Arjuna. So it is that he's describing work, but the fruits to God alone belong, who only is. So work mightily, but know that everything belongs to him. Work, love and know, so shall thy spirit win immortal bliss. You want Ananda? Here is the way I am showing you. Work, love and know. And then we'll be afraid what he's telling us. Love men. 10 commandments. Love men. Love God. Fear not to love, O king. Fear not to enjoy. Of course, enjoy is the highest of joys. In fact, in the synthesis, he describes that. He says, if you stifle the life's urge for joy, then you take away the possibility. So he says, refine the joy. For instance, instead of crude music, enjoy, very beautiful, like you have ragas and all this. Very beautiful. So learn to take the rasa of life. And then you make it subtle and more refined rather than suppressing the senses. Fear not to enjoy, for death's a passage. Grief a fancied thing. Fools to annoy. From self escape, self with a small s, and find in love alone a higher joy. So he's giving us a remedy. All sadness, he says, find in love alone a higher joy. So Manu says, this is the last bit. So it's like the final verdict he is revealing to us. O Rishi, I have wide dominion. The earth obeys, and heaven opens far beyond the sun, her golden gaze. But him I seek, the still and perfect one, the sun not rays. So he thinks that Rishi is just telling him things that, all these earthly joys, earthly love, but I am seeking the sun, not the rays. Tell me the right thing. Don't misguide me. So now the final word from the Rishi. Seek him upon the earth. Very powerful. Seek him upon the earth. For thee he set in the huge press of many worlds to build a mighty state. If you try seeking him at the ultimate, you will not even reach halfway through. But here on earth, in the human body, he dwells the supreme. This is the greatness of earth and men. Seek him upon earth. For man's success, who seeks his goal, perfect thy human might. Look at the path of perfection. Whatever we are doing, strive towards perfection. Mastery, everything, perfection includes. Perfect thy human might, perfect the race, for thou art he, O king. Where are you seeking? Whom are you seeking? Thou art he, Tattvamasi. For thou art he, O king, only the night is on thy soul. By thy own will, remove it and recover the serene whole. That's all that is there. He is within us. You don't know it because there is a ignorance. Remove it. Thou art indeed. Recover the serene whole, thou art indeed. Then raise up man the lover, to God the goal. So when we look at these words, they are not words, they are fire, living fire. We can catch it. It says yoga. And I keep telling, reading Sri Aurobindo's poem particularly, even prose is yoga. But reading his poems is pakka yoga because it doesn't go through the discursive intellect. It's a pity when Sri Aurobindo is discussed and debated in the typical academic way. It finishes. It's a yoga. It's coming from a yogi. It's not coming from an academic philosopher. It's coming from a yogi, and when we receive it like this, we grow in that consciousness. And then there is another poem, In the Moonlight. It's a very prophetic poem where he sees all about what is going to happen and how the Iron Age has ended and the Golden Age has come and how the Vishnu Sudarshan Chakra has come to earth and it is enringing the earth. And um, what we call as sin and evil is nothing but man's leavings from deep within. This is man's progress, for the iron age prepares the age of gold. What we call sin is but man's leavings as from deep within. The pilot guides him in his pilgrimage. So these poems are not just poems they are not even mystic poems or even spiritual poems. They are what Sri Aurobindo has seen. Some of them are very futuristic, a vision of science where he describes all about, the future things which are going to come. And then at the end, after all playing with this mud, man will say, but who am I playing with all this? That's when the new age will begin. So there are plenty of these. Then, of course, as I was saying, that there is this wonderful poem. One of my favorites is Elion. Elion is a special poem, we must say. Elion, Sri Aurobindo started writing around 1909, possibly when he was in the jail, and he continued it till almost 1937. So he was picking it up and leaving it. 1913, several drafts, 12, 13 drafts of the poem. And then he said in 1913 that it is complete. Actually, it is incomplete in one sense, but Sri Aurobindo speaks of it as complete. And the thing about this poem is that it is set in the setting of the Trojan War. Elion is another name for Troy. It's a more archaic name. It's like Hastinapur. So it based on, or some god who has Indraprasth. So based on god Indra, like that. So Elion is based on the god Ilios, who is the presiding deity of Troy. So it is about the Troy and the Trojan War. It covers that period in Homer has written 2 books. And one of them is the Iliad. Iliad is actually about the war. So Iliad starts with, Achilles entering the temple with a fury and destroying everything. It starts from there. And it ends with actually the siege of Troy by the Greeks, and finally all that Trojan horse must have heard about it. Then the other one is Odyssey. Odyssey is when the war is over, and now Odysseus, who is the hero of the war, like our sort of like Arjuna. So he is returning back, and he's experiencing the adventures. So again, in these narratives, Homer does tell us, Homer is regarded as one of the greatest poets. So he does tell us about few things here and there. What was the background of the war, why it happened, but it starts from the war itself. But what could have transpired before the war? That is a missing part. And that part Sri Aurobindo fulfills in Elion. It's a book, 9 books, runs over 9 books, 130 pages. And in 1937, there is a something in 1913 when he said that it's over, it's because he would have wanted to, give it more shape, but then the Arya came in and he became more and more busy. Then 1937, the World War started. And he says, if I only get some time, I would complete Savitri and Elion. Even then, that is the importance he gave to the poem. So, amazing poem, and its meter is the quantitative hexameter, so 6 foot. To me, it is like Yamuna flowing. That's my way of, looking at it. Like this, I feel whenever I read it. So, in this poem, he has brought in new characters, new understanding. There is I'll read just a bit of portion from there. So, lovely, that portion has opened randomly. So there are several books, like Savitri, you have several books. So the first book is the book of the Herald. So he's describing the dawn. It starts with dawn and how the dawn goddess comes, and this is a description. And this is a herald whom Achilles has sent. So all this is not there in Homer. So Achilles has sent a herald that go and talk to Priam. So Priam is the king of Troy, and all these Greek tribes are there, and Achilles is one of them. Now Achilles is like a lone warrior. So he is there not because of any other reason. And he says that I am not here because I am slave to king. I am not here because I am obeying this. I am not here because of any high ideal of that kind. I am here because I am impelled from within. The gods have sent me. That's how he says. But he gives a peace offer to Priam. And the offer is, I love your daughter, get her married to me. And then I will be with you. And Asia and Europe will unite. That is his logic. He says, one is that I'll be happy Achilles will stand by your side, and Greece and Europe, Asia and Europe will unite, because Greece is, that confluence, Turkey comes. So he says that it will be the most wonderful thing, and if I am on your side, nobody ever will raise the eyes. But if you refuse, on one side I have brought the gift of Achilles, his peace, and on the other side I have brought death in my right hand. So you choose. So this is the Herald, and Herald has to convey all this. Troy is also a mighty civilization. So many of these characters, as we know, were there in Sri Aurobindo's even present life. Most likely it is said that he was Paris himself, and Hector was Dilip Kumar Roy, that is for sure. So he had this special thing for Hector. And this Herald is going to convey this message of Achilles. Very powerful. It needs a lot of guts to go and tell inside. But they also respected the Doot, just like in India. Doot is not to be harmed or killed. So he is carrying message of Achilles. Choose his friendship or death. No second thing. So Sri Aurobindo describes in two words, two sentences. Or rather, one sentence, if we take it poem. Old and alone he arrived. Who is this he? He is the herald who is carrying the message of Achilles to the king. So he is old, he is alone. Old and alone he arrived, insignificant, feeblest of mortals. He is very weak in himself. He is a Sarathi, Doot. Old and alone he arrived, insignificant, feeblest of mortals, carrying fate in his helpless hands and the doom of an empire. Old and alone he arrived, feeblest. But what is he carrying? How destiny can choose? He is carrying the fate of an empire or its doom. Why? Because Achilles has challenged. And then he goes and then he gives the background that 9 long years have gone by, and finally, Achilles is giving that offer. And he tells them that, look here, this is what Achilles has told me, and I am conveying to you. It's up to you to take it or leave it. So here, the words of Achilles, which he is conveying to them. Asia joined with Greece, one world from the frozen rivers, trod by the hooves of the Scythian to farthest undulant Ganges. Justice contented, trace back her steps, and for brands of the burning, torches delightful shall break into Troy with the swords of the bridal. This if you agree to the marriage, not otherwise. I like a bridegroom. He is, after all, he is a son of a god. He is like Bhishma, Our Bhishma is son of a goddess and a human. So he is son of the river and a king. So that's how he is birthed, Achilles. And we know the Achilles heel because his mother had dipped him into the river Styx, that, the sacred river of, Greeks, that if I dip you, your whole body will be Vajra-like, Vajrang. Nobody can kill you. But because he had held the heels, that spot remained weak. So that's why it's called Achilles' heel. So that's where he is finally hit and he dies. Otherwise you can't kill him. He's got body of a god. So he says, I like a bridegroom will seize on your city and clasp and defend her. Safe from the envy of Argos, from Lacedaemonian hatred, safe from the hunger of Crete and the Locrians, violent rapine, all those, tribes which are there. He says, I'll guard it safe from all these people. You don't have to then worry. You can sleep. I am alone is enough. But if you turn from my voice and you hearken only to Ares is the war god. So he says, if you want to turn only to him and not listen to me, crying for battle within you, deluded by Hera and Pallas, they are all gods. Swiftly the fierce death surges shall close over Troy, and her ramparts, built by the gods, shall be stubble and earth to the tread of the Hellene. For to my tents I return not, I swear it by Zeus and Apollo. So he says, if you listen to me, fine. Otherwise, you can call all the gods. Look at it. Look at the man's. You can call all the gods. Hera, Pallas, I know. Ares, war god, you can call. Doesn't matter. But Troy will be reduced to rebels. This I promise you. Because I swear by Zeus, their greatest god, that I am not going to return back from here. Either you will be destroyed or you will marry me. So look at the might and the power and force. And no wonder, Sri Aurobindo identified with this Greek spirit, which is so much like ancient Aryan spirit. And then so this is the assembly. When, actually his word comes, they are all silent because they know that he alone is, it's like Bhishma Pitama, you can't kill him. So everybody is silent. And then there is a voice that speaks. And this is a character Sri Aurobindo has introduced largely. And this is a lady who comes from Asia. And her name is Penthesilea. So she says, what offer? And look at the words. Long answered aloud to the gods the virgin Penthesilea. Now she is not speaking to mere men in the assembly, but to the gods. And what is this lady speaking? Long I had heard in my distant realms of the fame of Achilles, ignorant still while I played with the ball and ran in the dances. So when I used to dance and play with ball, I had heard about Achilles. Thinking not ever to war, but I dreamed of the shock of the hero. I have loved him since that age. What a hero, what a hero. I never thought that I will meet him in war. So might a poet in land who imagines the rumor of ocean yearn with his lust for the giant upheaval, the dances of hilltops, toss of the yellow mane, and the tawny march, and the voices, lion-like, claiming earth as a prey for the clamorous water. So this greatness, Sri Aurobindo, everywhere we see. He never liked that littleness in human being, whether it be littleness of heart, littleness of thought, littleness of action, littleness of force. Everything should be great and mighty, not the titanic, but the godlike. So here is that godlike movement. So have I longed as I came for the cry and the speed of Achilles. I have come only for this. I don't care what happens to you and others. But he has lurked in his ships. He has sulked like a boy that is angry. He was angry. He said, what is this? I have come to meet him and he is acting funny. He is like sulking. Glad am I now of his soul that arises hungry for battle. Glad whether victor I live or defeated, travel the shadows. Once shall my spear have rung on the shield of the Pythian Achilles. So he says, I just want to fight once and pierce his shield with my spear. After that, I win or lose, it doesn't matter. Because I wanted to meet him. I love him. But this fellow is just sulking. He wants battle. I am happy at least he has asked for battle. Look at the bhava behind. And it ends with, peace I desire not. Kali. Peace I desire not. I came to a haughty and resolute nation. Honor and fame they cherish, not life by the gift of a foeman. I have not come to a nation who wants life begging at the door of a foeman just because Achilles is giving a peace offer. You want to receive it like a beggar? No, I have come to a nation that stands for honor and fame. Look at these lines. And what these lines are magical. Anyways, this book probably will take up once as part of our collected poems. And so there are many of these. I'll close it with one of the poems, which is the last. So there are plenty of sonnets. We have read some of them. This is also a very interesting poem. Nonsense and Surrealist verse. Ever heard of this? Now, Surrealist poetry is like, you just let the subconscious come up with images randomly. So you just let it come. Most of us, so it's very funny. I don't want to read it now. Otherwise, you'll be splitting into laughter. Okay? So it's about, I'll just maybe, so 658. So just a few lines. It's very interesting what kind of experiments. I mean, nothing is, he says that I had always, why he wrote philosophy was because he says it was not my interest. But I've heard that, I'd heard that a yogi can do anything. So I took up, that's how the life divine has come. Yogi can do anything, so why not? So he tried his hand, his philosophy, and what philosophy? Now people are only looking at it. This is very, very funny. So, I heard a foghorn shouting at a sheep, and oh, the sweet sound made me laugh and weep. But the sheep was on the hither shore of the little less and the ever never more. Whatever it means. I sprang on its back, it jumped into the sea. I was near to the edges of eternity. Then suddenly the foghorn blared again. There was no sheep, it had perished of ear pain. I took a boat and steered to the afar, hoping to colonize the polar star. Look at the surrealism of the nonsensical. He's taking a boat in the ocean to colonize the polar star. So, but there is always something in it. But in the boat, there was a dangerous goose, whom some eternal idiot had let loose. To this wild animal I said not, "Bo," but it was not because I did not know. Can you imagine this, Aurobindo? Full soon I was on shore with dreadful squeals, and the fierce biped cackling at my heels. Alarmed, I ran into a lion's den. Why? Because goose, dangerous goose, so he's running into a lion's den. Alarmed, I ran into a lion's den, and after me ran 3,000 armored men. The lion bolted through his own back door and set up a morose, dissatisfied roar. At this my courage rose. I grew quite brave and showed myself into a tiger's cave. The tiger snarled. I thought it best instead to don my pajamas and go to bed. So I turned my eyes away from his grimace. Tiger is grimacing. At night, the beast began my back to claw. Okay, look at the image. And growled out that I was his brother-in-law. I rose and thought it best to go away to a doctor's house. Besides, it was nearly day. The doctor shook his head and cried, "For a back, pepper and salt are the remedy." Alack, why? Because the tiger is clawed. But I objected to his condiments and thought the doctor had but little sense. Then I returned to my own little cot, for really things were now extremely hot. And I looked about to find my dressing gown. I was awake. I had tumbled on the floor. A shark was hammering at my front door. Now you see, this is... Can you imagine? And how should be literally, in this I see a kind of cosmos. How in cosmos, if you look at it, it's crazy. And there is joy in it. And actually, this is a very profound link, but I don't want to get into it. People say, oh, he's finding meaning in everything. But there is a meaning, even in the most surreal and nonsensical words. But just look at the joy he brings out, through a... And finally, the last poem, let me read, which he wrote. There are in it 3 poems in Greek, in French, and as we know, he wrote in Tamil, in Sanskrit. Aurobindo wrote in these. I don't know whether he wrote in Odia or not, because my friends would like to know. Maybe he wrote, we don't know, but they are not documented. In Bengali, of course, he wrote, which have been translated by Nolnida, but they are part of the Bengali writings. Please read them. They are amazing poems in Bengali. When we speak about Bangla writings, then we'll probably touch upon. So let me close with this. This is the last poem. And again we see autobiographical. Page 631, Voice of the Summits. Hear, voice of the summits, leap down from thy peaks of ineffable splendor. So these are metrical experiments. Then Aurobindo has done experiments on meters in English poetry, which is something very interesting, very new, very creative, because he had to bring out something new like Mother's music. Mother has brought out new form of music which people are yet to understand. The only one who could understand was Sunilda. And I think now a few people are beginning to new forms of painting, new forms of art, so new idea. So she has brought in this world new things, and she wants patras, vessels who can receive it rightly and manifest it. Here, where I struggle alone, unheeded of men and unaided, here by the darkness downtrod, here in the midnight of God, I have come down from the heights and the outskirts of heaven, into the gulfs of God's sleep, into the inconscient deep. So it starts, first poem is light, and the last one is where he is entering into the dark inconscient. All I had won that the mind can win of the word and the wordless, knowledge sunbright forever, and the spiritual crown of endeavor. Share in the thoughts of the cosmic self and its orders to nature, cup of its nectar of bliss, dreams on the breast of its peace. But wait, let me close with this poem rather. It is about the silence is all. And there he speaks of how to really, in a way, what really happens in these poems and how to really receive them. So this is Silence is All, 644. Yes. Silence is all, say the sages. Silence watches the work of the ages. In the book of silence, the cosmic scribe has written his cosmic pages. Silence is all, say the sages. Then people would say, if that is all, why did you write all this? So Sri Aurobindo says, what then of the word, O speaker? What then of the thought, O thinker? So now he's saying what really it is. Thought is the wine of the soul and the word is the beaker. So all the words, they are beaker. What it contains is Ananda. So when we read his poems, we get the touch of that first creative Ananda. Poetry is meant to bring out, imitate, mimic is not the right word. But it actually brings out the first stir of creation, which is the rhythmic word. So it is the rhythm, the vibration through which creation starts, and it's delight. So poetry is meant to capture that highest form of rhythmic word. Prose cannot capture it, obviously. Because for prose, it has to come down at the intuitive level. Pashyanti vak. But poetry can capture it. So that rhythm it captures and it expresses. So poetry is regarded as that's why in Indian thought, the Vedic rishis who were poets were at once kavi and kratu. They created by poetry that truth. So poetry can actually create. Whatever we read in a poetic form has the power, like the mantra, it can create the deity. Thought is the wine of the soul. So it is coming from the soul, all the rasa. And that rasa is given through words. And the word is the beaker. Life is the banquet table. All the experiences of life, as the soul of the sage is the drinker. What of the wine, O mortal? I am drunk with the wine as I sit at wisdom's portal. How did I get this wine? By sitting at wisdom's portal. Waiting for the light beyond thought and the word immortal. Long I sit in vain at wisdom's portal. And then the last 4 lines. How shalt thou know the word when it comes, O seeker? How will you know that you have the word? How shalt thou know the light when it breaks, O witness? I shall hear the voice of the God within me and grow wiser and meeker. Humility is the sign of knowledge. So when I know, I is dropped, and there is only the knower and the known, then we know. So he says that, how will I know? When we grow wiser and meeker, I shall be the tree that takes in the light as its food. I shall drink its nectar of sweetness. So this is, as Dara once wrote a doggerel, Life divine, mother's wine, it is out, let us shout. This is the wine of the Supreme. This is ambrosia of the gods, the somras. And that too, concentrated and distilled somras, unadulterated, Sri Aurobindo is giving straight to us through the beaker of words, which we can read fortunately. And to read it is to have all the effects that the somras has on man. Raso Vaisaha, verily he is delight, and that delight is expressed best in poetry. He is poetry. Thank you.